So I've been receiving a lot of messages, a lot of heartfelt messages about how I make my iconic chiptune pop music, chiptune hyper pop music, like these songs, for example. This, or maybe this. This one blows up. This one I didn't really like. And this one, everyone loved that, of course. So yeah, I've been receiving a lot of messages on how I make my stuff. So I'm here to break it down for you on how I do it. Sadly, I don't want to go back to my old laptop and try to like find a project file for itself or Field of Flowers. So, but all of them kind of have the similar workflow. So I have this one here, which is this new Stellar Sky 2 song that I have just released. It's pretty much the same thing with some difference here and there. So I'm gonna break this one down. And also at the second half, I'll also explain how I did Field of Flowers, as that seems to be that people have been requesting that a lot. So yeah. So first up for me, whenever I make this kind of stuff, I will. So how do I put this? First up, the melody. Or usually what I'll do is I'll create a bass first. So let me solo this. Now, as you can hear, when I make the bass, I will always try to make it sound as big as possible. So if you want to try to be like me, I'll suggest you this. First up, write a good bass line. Like, write a pretty decent bass line first. Like, I don't think you can hear it because it's a reese. Let me push it up an octave. It's like a very solid, very cliche classic chord progression. Just like go from a major one and go down the major scale. That is pretty much it. I used it a bunch of songs that you want the chord progression to feel very floaty, very down to earth and stuff. So I usually do this. And then the B section, you can do the same thing. You can do a new thing, but I usually, if I'm lazy, I'm just gonna copy this into a new part and did some tweaking here and there so that the end part doesn't feel as strained. So you can connect the end part to more stuff. You need to keep whenever I write chords, I will have this mindset where I will always try to make it sound progressively bigger as possible. So starting from here to the end, try to think of a chord progression that feels more and more intense and more hard to breathe every step you go by. So now it goes to a 2. That's a lot of tension. That's a lot of skip. Suddenly I did a key shift. I did a shifting. I changed it into a C sharp minor instead of C sharp major, like a subtle key change. So that also gives it a lot of tension, which you can play around with it to resolve in the next part, which is usually how I do it. Just does 16 bars. So once you have this, I usually use a reese to create a how do you call it? Create a pretty nice fundamental. It's pretty stereo, it's pretty wide. It's a bit unstable, but you can control it in post, so don't worry about that yet. So it's pretty wide and it's pretty strong, and I think it's pretty good for this kind of electronic music, Aries. So next up is the chord. Now here is where most of my magic in this song goes to. As you could hear, like there's a lot of stacking. This is the part where I have the most fun. So let's try to only focus the three stacks here. These are the fundamental chords that are like the fundamental chords of the major scale. I'll let you listen to the entire thing. Very fucking big, very huge. That is always my magic, and that is always like the sprinkling magic that I always put in my music. It's this very big triumphant chord. This all really depends. No, it all really depends on what kind of mood you're gonna try to aim for. Like, if you're gonna aim for a more groovy approach, aim for a more like garagey, more fun, not very triumphant, you can chop this up. This is most songs does not have this very big saw playing in the background, but I do because I want the song to sound as big as possible while still having it controlled. By the way, I don't want to go too far, but yeah. You can like chop it up. You don't have to stack it this much. You can chop into some cool groovy patterns if your mood says, like, if your mood is suggesting on that way. So okay, so how I do this is, okay, fine, I'll do a lazy approach. Usually how I do it is because I'm a lazy piece of shit, I don't want to take too much time about drawing chords. So you see this thing right here in FL Studio? This is like the auto pitch snap. So I'm just gonna do this. Copy, 1 2, copy, 1 2. Now there, you got it. The basic chord, roughly the most of the chords in here. So like, yeah, there, you got the chords now. Let me solo this. Yep. Now this is the fundamentals. It's just the chords that are in the scale according to the root notes, and like maybe we'll do some adjusting because this is a key shift, so you have to change the way the chords are. So right now the chord is at, oh, what? Yeah, I guess it sounds kind of weird, so I have to change it. Just like, just change the key so that it's the A is in the A of the C sharp minor chord instead of C sharp major chord. Major scale is what I mean, yeah. And how I go with this is to just, and like most of the magic here is to just honestly just stack it as much as possible, but stack it reasonably. My like the thought process of me behind this is that, like, as you can see here, like this thing goes down, but the voicings kind of go the opposite way. This kind of contrary motion kind of gives the song more wider feeling, and like something that it gives the song like a pretty like small, like a pretty like nice feeling of something small that is slowly blossoming and slowly expanding into something new, into something big beyond the concept that your mind can comprehend, type stuff. So this is my philosophy in doing these chords. So I usually how I will stack this is I will have this note snap on and just listen to what feels right to the chord, and then I'm gonna just stack it. Usually it's just stacking a lot of thirds or fifths along each other. That's usually my way, like the oh, Chord. That's usually an octave above. You can do a seventh, which is a step down. It's pretty, like, it does not resolve as much. There's still some tension, which gives it a unresolved feeling, which is also a good thing because you can stem it to even bigger stuff. So let's have some fun. Think of like, what melody would this chord have? Not the actual melody, but the rough melody that this chord feels like it needs to. Something of like a sub melody, like a supporting melody instead of a main melody. So like, that's way too big. Something like this, you know. Like, for example, I've noticed a lot that when you're writing this kind of quote-unquote melody, there's this kind of anchor, like an anchor note that imagine like you like how I imagine writing my melody is that, like, imagine you're a butterfly, you know, you're approaching a, I don't know biology, imagine a dot. That dot is a main motive, the main hook melody that you want to circle around, whether it's a pattern of a melody or a single note. Like, for example, for this one, it's a single note. So let's have it on a 1, C sharp. Imagine like a spiral. I usually imagine like a line or spiral that spins around the dot randomly, occasionally crossing the dot itself. And that is usually how I think about it. Like, let's draw a line right here. Like, as you can see, like, you can see how the melody kind of spins out of the dot a bit to its fifth. Then, and then it spins back again. And then it goes up. And then back down again. So it's like a sine wave, like a spiral that like converge and diverge together across a static line, if that makes sense. And usually usually most of the notes work, but as far as I've experimented, like 1 or 2 or 5 usually worked the best, or 3. And now we changed the hook to the 5 instead, and now we're playing around 5. Now my magic usually stays at this last 8 bar. This is where you have the you can do whatever you want. This is where I usually make the chord as big as possible. Like, in this, for example, like it's a lot more stacked. As you can see, like there's a lot of holes in the middle where I intentionally left empty to give it, to not make it too big, but here I just feel everything apart. So I just stacked a lot of them. Try to stack in a way where it feels like a melody, is what I'm trying to say. This is usually the approach. This is also the same approach I did in Field of Flowers, where I make the first 8 bar pretty simple, but the final has some sort of converging or diverging feeling that is really, really fucking accentuated. I think in that example, we also have the similar way where the chord, it doesn't go like this, it goes absolutely like down chromatically. Usually when you go the chord down chromatically, that usually gives a more desperate feeling rather than actual like ascending type stuff where you can hear it here, because there's this sort of dissonant and resonance that are alternating. So like like good, bad, or I mean yeah, this one's off key. So there's this alternating between good feeling and conflicted feeling that converge, that alternates between each other, which makes the which is the reason why most gothic hardcore songs uses this kind of chord progression, because it has this very like stabbing feeling where it stabs you every single off-key chords that technically makes sense, but it's not in a key you would expect it to be. Unlike this, you know, because this is all in the same key. It doesn't have any rule breaking except the last two. It feels invulnerable. It feels down to earth. It doesn't feel like you're falling down or something type stuff. Where in Field of Flowers, I did this combined with a similar approach of rising melody. So not only is it more desperate, I'm gonna play an audio clip right here. Not only does it feel desperate, it also feels big. So combining it together, it feels like a wound that is spreading, and it gets even more painful because not only is it bigger, it's desperate. It's a despair feeling that slowly expands more, and that's usually my approach for this. Yeah. That's my entire philosophy of how I make my chords and my stuff. Yeah. And if you want my sound design, it's just a super saw, nothing much. Basic shit. You have 3 octaves of 8, 7 to 10. Usually I use around this. Around 7 to 10 saws that are pretty close together. Try to make it so that the higher the octave is, the wider it is. So that usually when you're sound designing, if you do like this, if you have it like super wide on a fundamental octave, it sounds pretty off tune. But if it's really high and you have it off tune, it sounds not as bad because there's no fundamental notes that are like audible enough for you to hear the dissonance. So if you want a chord to have a really big feeling, try to make it so that the higher it is, the more big it is, while still on the lower, as in like the lower octaves you get, try to keep it stereo. Try to keep it as tight and not as wide as the highest one, and that usually comes out pretty good as a super saw. Like here. When like it feels like a pretty good supporting higher frequency that is wide. Even though it's off tune, I feel like it does a good job at creating wideness around it. So I feel like this is a good way to do it. I think this is also the approach for a lot of other like Camellia style synths too. You can even go crazier, I guess. Now, like, we're approaching Camellia style wideness. I don't really like that. And yeah, put a low pass because I have a white noise here and it can be pretty muddy at the low end. I just cut everything off at the low end because Supersaw is supposed to give space to around the high mid range. So I cut this thing off because it's not needed. And then, you know, compression. And for a good measure, I also put in OTT, another compressor, because I don't know why. Another compressor. This one is not multi-band, and then EQ to do another cut because when you compress it, the lower ends can bleed out a bit. So I cut and emphasize around 1K. You know, as like the same thing as Porter. I usually associate 1K with screaming. Like I'm gonna paraphrase him. Like that's usually around 1K, and that's usually where the most impactful, the most like screeching sound are usually in, which is around this 1K. That's why I push this 1K range. Like compared to if I put this down, it does not feel as powerful unless you push this 1K up. There's this like this factor that is like pushing the sound up, and it makes it more screamy. I really like that. Now, okay, on to the next part, the second layer. Or should I? No, it's gonna get too complex. The next step, I usually just write a melody. I'm sorry, I have no idea how I do it. I just listen to a whole lot. Try to listen to as much chiptune song as possible. Like, just listen to a fuck ton of it and try to understand the flow of the melody and how they do it. That's usually it. So, how do I do this? Let me try. But I can break down the sound designing of this. I have a layer here where now this is the step where also the dimension part is coming. So ooh, I have this much? Holy shit. I have 5 vitals stacked onto each other. So first up, we got this. I usually start with the chiptune first, so this one. And then this is where the dimension part comes in. I try to make it sound bigger. So I use a super saw again to accentuate this part. Same thing. Try to keep it high. Try to EQ it in a way where it does not, like as you can see here. Try to EQ it in a way where it does not, where the frequencies of the super saw does not fight with the chiptune, because we are making a chiptune pop music. We need to keep the super saws of this melody as a supporting wideness to it, which is why that is a lot of mix. TLDR, just add a reverb, add a really like 60% mix. That's a lot. Try to drown out the super sauce of that, so that the chiptune stays ahead as the first thing in the melody mix, so that it sounds big, yet there's this chiptune stasis in the middle of it. Yep. What's this? Ah, the mono lead, I guess. I don't think you need this. It's just a super saturated squares, like super tight, this it I feel like it's a good addition. It gives a pretty strong but wide. Like chiptune is usually very screamy. It's a little screeching to the ears. I think this gives a good layer of more stable, but also tight, but also not at also big, but also not as screechy as chiptune. So I think that's why I added. Usually my rag goes like this. All of my songs have this super tight square combined with super saw, and that's kind of it. And if I have chiptune, I'm gonna have a chiptune above it. Already sounds pretty good. The next one is arps. Just atmospheric stuff. Just make any arp. I don't really care. Anything works. Try to keep it at high end. As usual, arps, this kind of arps, atmospheric supporting stuff belongs to the high end. Always try to cut it so that the frequencies of each instrument that you have just made does not fight with each other. Make sure that each instrument has its own range to it. And prioritize the drowning properly, like chiptune, you know, it's the first one. Try to not make the reverb too much. Compress it a bit. And the super sauce, make sure to drown it using either reverb or EQ or delay, or even use a spectral compressor to reduce the resonance of the super sauce so that the only noisy part comes out but not the melodic, etc. Do whatever you want to make sure that when you listen to it, you can pinpoint the reasons behind each mix in the instruments. That's kind of it. I think that's it. What's this one? Oh, that's a cool addition. That's just a fifth. A good thing about fifth is that it works on both major and minor scale. It adds this fifth. It adds this harmonic that I think it feels very Nekomata style. I think Nekomata and Camille use this a lot of fifth note adding above it to give it a more Asian-y, oriental resonance sound character to it. It's just the same. It's just adding 7 more semitones to it. That's what a fifth is. You can add it if you want the melody to sound oriental or like have more weird, quote unquote weird harmonics to it. It does add a cool character to it. It makes it sound more, I don't know, cool. Like compared, like it sounds like a added harmonics to it. Like it adds another harmonic to it that gives the sound more, I don't know, cute, cooler approach, I guess. I don't know. And then the next thing is just harmony, nothing much. I just have another chiptune overlay of it. A little quieter, the same mix as a chiptune, nothing much. Now the next now this is usually where I write my orchestral part. So nothing much. I have this choir, strings, celeste. It's written as deco violin, but it's actually not. I changed it to something else in the way. So wait, what is this? Oh, I didn't even use it. All right. So, and the most important part, the tubular bells. A lot of chiptune, a lot of cute music use this. Anything should work fine. I think I used an Undertale sound font for this. So, the same thing. Just add as much dimension as possible. Like add like fucking strings, choir, celeste, xylophone, violin, tubular bells. Try to add as much as possible and make sure you mix it properly. Now, as how I mix it, usually the violins, usually on BBC, I use a BBC free orchestral VST. Usually this plugin does not have as much low end, so I need to like push it first before doing anything. and then a lot of reverb, like very big, a lot of decay. The wet is a lot, like push a lot. You can even make it even more stereo, because this atmospheric stuff, you need to value on how it feels on your stereo image. Try to feel it on your left and right ear, like feel how big it is. If it feels too in the middle, that's usually a bad thing, because that's where most of the drums and most of the melodies are in. And it's gonna fight those melodies, making it sound not good. So try to keep it stereo, I guess. Atmospheric stuff. And here, I push this 1K even more, because that's usually where the vocal is the most prominent. I think you can even use a stereo expander, but don't use it too much. This one's also free, by the way. Yeah, but I usually don't do it because the BBC already has its own stereo image setting on itself, so you don't even need to do anything about this. But if you're using like a 8-bit, like some sound font strings, you need to really keep in mind on how it feels on your stereo image. Like in this thing, the choirs are, I think the choir is a Vienna Synchron choir. I think it already has its own stereo image. And like for violin, the violin, it's set to pan towards the left a little bit, and the celeste are pan towards the right a little bit and stuff. Again, and yeah, these are the chords. Here, the turbulent bells, I just pan it to the left a little bit, and it works fine. Just don't make it at the center. And then yeah, a lot of big reverbs. Turbulent bells, like try to keep it not as screechy, but as big, like even bigger than anything in the universe. Like as you can hear, like OTT over reverb is such a bad move, but because I want the thing to sound so fucking big that it swells beyond anything in the universe. And like that's why I do it. Like compared to the original one, it sounds okay, but it's not big enough. So I put a reverb and compress the fuck out of it. Now it swells and the reverb's like it rings left and right, and it's really big, and I really like how it sounds. That's kind of it for the chords, not gonna lie. So let's move on to the next one, which is the melody. Nothing much, I just slap a celeste over it. Try to balance it, by the way. Like as you can hear, like last time I put turbulent bells on the left to balance it out. I put celeste on the right ear. Is it? And the same thing, just cut the unnecessary frequencies. Push this. Not a good move, but I forgive it because I'm a bitch. Yeah, that's kind of it. And then the drums and the grooves, just write whatever you want, low key. It's not even well written, like this reverb, the snare reverb got cut off. But yeah. As for how I mix my melody, the thing that does not appear in here but in other songs are the sidechaining. When you're sidechaining something, try to make sure that I'm gonna pull up the Feel the Flowers audio real quick. There is a slight sidechaining to the melodies, so not melodies, to the background music. So usually how I sidechain is think think of what feels the most important in your mix, whether it's chord, it's rhythm, it's melody, or it's bass, or whatever. Whatever feels the most important, try to push it upwards to the mix. When you're sidechaining something to the drums, you're essentially saying that, hey, this instrument does not feel as important as the drums that I've wrote. So I'm gonna duck you down whenever there's a drum on it, so that the drums sounds more important than you. But the thing is, the melody, I want it to feel so powerful and so big that not even the drums can hold it down. That's why I do not sidechain the melodies, and instead keep the background elements like chords, bass, orchestral elements. Not necessary. You can keep it not sidechained so that the stereo, so that it feels constantly wide and not randomly back to mono and back to stereo. You can keep the orchestral elements untouched. But the synth, the bass, the arps and stuff, you can sidechain it. If you want the drums to overpower it, or if you feel like the second most important elements in the song you're making is the drums, you can sidechain it. Try to prioritize the ways you put your mix in the mix stuff. So good. That's the basics. And now, if you want if you want to feel more space to it, you can also add a piano. I think it does a good job at filling the mids, because you might notice that I never mentioned mids aside from like the orchestral part. Like, these are the supersaws, bass, melody, not really here. It's a little missing. You can find whatever fits. You can even push the orchestral elements to fill in the mid stuff. I usually use a piano that is super compressed, because usually orchestral elements like strings and stuff are very dynamic. Like, they're like quiet. They're quiet and loud, quiet and loud. Like, it goes like warm. It's not really constant. That's why I use a piano, where I will just write a normal piano, but it doesn't even have to be realistic knuckle, because it's gonna be behind the mix anyways. Just like write the piano and draw the MIDI and compress it so hard that all the frequency range are stable, and that is where you can comfortably put it in the mix, so that it constantly fills in the mid space without feels too out of place, because it's compressed beyond its recognition. Not a good thing if you want the piano to sound legible and sound good in the mix. This piano is only for the background, the filling in the spaces. It does a good job. Yeah, that's kind of it. You can even add a pad. If you feel like the chords are not ambient enough, you can add one more. If you want, you can try that. I don't really mind. And usually this is it. Cymbals, crashes, etc. Feel free to do anything you want. And this is kind of it. This is usually where the creativity now lies, on your own volition, on your own interpretation. Like for this one, there's this kind of call and response melody. There's like two different melodies playing. Like this is a response. super big. Like it goes so big. It wants to feel very big. That's kind of it. Now there's another melody. And as also a good measure behind this whole chaos, there's also another melody that is super far back in the mix. I don't know if you hear it. It goes like I still remember it. That's the old melody. It didn't feel too amazing, so I pushed it back to the mix as a background melody instead. It does a good job as its own subtle melody that adds another dimension to the sound. You know, it's like a supporting melody in the back. It's kind of like many voices fighting for each other type shit. And the mix, honestly, just I see it happened a lot with a lot of songs where it sounds too high. Just make sure that when you turn on EQ, it's like equal, you know? Like when you turn on EQ, like just make sure that the curves are the waves are in normal, like are like in a straight line, you know. Don't keep it too high, don't keep it too low, just keep it normal. You can use the glue compression too. If it's a little too much, I just do it for, you know, like I just do it because I wanna demonstrate it. But yeah, just keep every range equal and just slap a clipper at the end. It makes it sound super loud. I didn't actually master like this. When I usually master, it's a whole new thing, a whole new world that you have to learn, but now is not the time. Just make sure that all the ranges sound equal. That's kind of it. And for good measure, keep the bass mono, the highs, make it big, make it stereo. That's kind of all my advices. And yeah, have fun. I think that's pretty much on how I do it. The rest lies on the composition. Try to make it feel as big. Try to make sure if you're gonna stack 3 different melodies to each other, make sure it goes well together. Make sure that all 3 of them have some call and response, that it is going on their own. A calls to B, B calls to C, and then AB combines together to call, BC combines together to respond. Think of this back and forth talking between different synths. That's usually how I do it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Not that hard. Just be creative and embrace storytelling in music.